Welcome to week 14 of my NFL predictions. Last week I went 16-0, putting my record at 136-59, and the teams on bye weeks are Broncos, Colts, Commanders, Patriots, Ravens, and Texans. And starting off the week on Thursday Night Football, you have the Packers playing the Lions. The Packers able to win on Thanksgiving against the Dolphins in convincing fashion. And the Lions were also able to win on Thanksgiving against the Bears, which it was a little sketchy, but a win's a win. And kind of weird. These teams have to play on Thursday 2 weeks in a row. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's weird. But, I mean, it should be a really good game. I mean, both these teams are Super Bowl contenders. And, one team is trying to get the 1 seed and one team is, trying to play spoiler to that and potentially win the division. And the Lions could clinch a playoff berth if they win this game. I believe that's the case. I don't know. They'll make the playoffs, but they can officially clinch a spot if they win this game. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I do think the Lions will win this one. I think it'll be, like I said, a really good game, and I think the Lions are going to get a go-ahead drive to win this one with a score of 27-23. And starting off Sunday, we have the Browns taking on the Steelers. The Browns losing on Monday Night Football in a very entertaining game to the Denver Broncos. And the Steelers able to beat the Bengals on last Sunday in a very entertaining game. Both these teams, had very high-scoring games. And it's very atypical of both these teams for that to happen because both these teams have good defenses, and it's just, I guess shit happened for them. Shit happened to their defense, and they didn't exactly perform up to standard, but I do think that'll change. I don't think the Browns will give up 40-plus points in back-to-back weeks, and I don't think the Steelers are going to put up 40-plus points in back-to-back weeks. I do have the Steelers winning just because they're the better team. I do think the Browns are better than their 3-9 record. I think if they started Jameis Winston, they would probably be in playoff contention at this point. But they started Deshaun Watson, because of his contract. So, yeah, Browns, they're just trying to play spoiler down the stretch. And I don't think they will in this game. They could. They definitely could, but I'm going to go with the safe pick, the Steelers. I'm going to say they win this one 17-16. All right, our second 1 o'clock game we have is the Saints taking on the Giants. The Saints losing in a close game to the Rams last week, in a game where they almost won, but they let the Rams come back in the second half. The Giants played on Thanksgiving and lost to the Cowboys, and they only lost by 7, but the score was honestly closer than the game. The Giants honestly got dominated, and I honestly think they're going to get dominated again because they've been playing pretty terrible. The Giants are just a dumpster fire at this point in time. And I do think the Saints are going to win convincingly because they've actually been playing decently since their coach, Dennis Allen, got fired. Darren Rizzi's a great interim head coach. They're going to have to give him some looks into being the next head coach next season. So I'm going to pick the Saints to win this one with a score of 24-10. All right, next up we have the Jets taking on the Dolphins. The Jets losing to the Seahawks last week in another game they should have won. That game got away from them. They were actually dominating, and then they just let the Seahawks crawl back into it. And then the Dolphins losing to the Packers in a game where they just straight up got dominated. They didn't play inspiring football at all, and that's concerning considering that they absolutely needed that game in the worst way possible. So both these teams not looking great at the moment, especially not the Jets. Jets are, oh man, I can't get started on them. This video will be an hour long, but yeah, they've just been a fucking disaster. And I do think the Dolphins will win. and kind of get back on track for their playoff push, because they could still most definitely make the playoffs if some things go their way. So I'm going to pick the Dolphins to win this game 29-14. All right, another divisional game. We got the Jags taking on the Titans. The Jags losing to the Texans by 3 points and losing their quarterback for, I would assume, the rest of the season. And the Titans getting blown out by the Commanders. And both these teams, I don't know who besides a Jags or a Titans fan is going to willingly sit down and watch this game. I don't think this game's going to be very good. It might be competitive, but from a standpoint of, this game mattering, no, this game does not matter at all. Both these teams the Jags are officially eliminated from the playoffs, and the Titans essentially are. So, I don't really see much coming out of this game. And, the Jags don't have Trevor Lawrence because that dirty hit from Azeez Al-Shaair, which that's definitely not ideal. And, I do think the Titans will win. I am winning this one 20-17. All right, next up, we got a game with actual headlines. We have the Vikings taking on the Falcons. And the Falcons losing to the Chargers in pretty embarrassing fashion last week. And the Vikings able to win against the Cardinals in a very suspicious matter. But I don't think this will be that competitive of a game. But there will be some headlines because Kirk Cousins' revenge game, because he's on the Falcons, used to play for the Vikings. So you got that storyline there. We'll see if the Falcons can make this a game. I could see it because the Vikings are one of those teams that makes every game a game. But we'll have to see if these teams can put up points, because I think that's going to be a struggle. I think the Falcons' offense has been struggling as a whole these past few weeks. And the Vikings are the Vikings. They're going to make this a game, even though, honestly, they should crush the Falcons. They really should. They're a much better team than them. If you couldn't already tell by the record. But the Vikings do play down to competition a lot, so I am going to pick them, but I do think they will win in a close-ish game, 17-10. Next up, we got the Panthers taking on the Eagles. The Panthers were so close to winning on last Sunday against the Bucs. That was, if you know what I'm talking about, you know how close they were. They were in field goal range and they fumbled, and they would have won if they made that field goal. So tough loss for the Panthers. And the Eagles able to get their 8th consecutive win against their opponent, the Baltimore Ravens. Not their 8th win against the Ravens, their 8th win this season. But I actually think this game will be competitive. And the reason I do is because the Eagles, I feel like they've got to drop one at some point. And I think the Panthers, they've been playing a lot better ever since they brought Bryce Young back to start. He's been actually looking like a decent quarterback. And, Panthers fans got to feel good about that. And as much as I think the Panthers could randomly win this game, because I could definitely see him playing spoiler, the Eagles are too good. Not this week, maybe next week. I got the Eagles winning in a close one, 24-20. All right, next up, we got a Pirate Bowl. We got the Raiders taking on the Buccaneers. The Raiders, that's tough. They lost by 2 points to the Chiefs last week on Friday, or last Friday, Black Friday. And they were in field goal range, just like the Panthers, and they fumbled the snap, and they lost in that fashion. So tough loss for the Raiders. And the Bucs, they were able to escape with a win against the Panthers. It definitely looks sketchy, but a win's a win. And I mean, division games are always weird, so that's why I'm kind of giving the Bucks a pass for that. And the Panthers have been playing better, so it's not like they're the same Panthers that, from the, September. They actually have been getting better. And this game, I could see this one being close too, because the Raiders, despite their record, I honestly think they've been playing better these past few weeks. They almost beat the Chiefs. They gave the Broncos a scare. And I know those are division games. Those are weird, but I mean, those are two good teams. And they're another team. I think they could play spoiler for some team down the stretch. Although I am still going to pick the Bucks because the Bucks need this win. They need it. If they want to make the playoffs, they have to win this game. And they're going to give the Raiders everything they have. So I have the Bucks winning this one 23-20. All right, next up we got the Seahawks taking on the Cardinals in another division game. We've had a lot of them these past few weeks. Seahawks able to win in quotations against the Jets in a game that they looked sketchy in for the first half. And the Cardinals, they probably should have won, but they lost to the Vikings in a game that they just let slip away from them. So you got one team that got lucky and won, and one team that let a victory slip out of their hands, or feathers, because they're birds. But this will be a good game because it's a division game, and these teams always put on a show. And, the Cardinals, they need a win. They really do. If they want to make the playoffs, they need to win this game. If the Seahawks win this game, I mean, they've essentially, I don't want to say clinched the division, but they kind of have if they do win this game. Although, I am actually going to go with the Cardinals here to get a victory because, like I said with the Bucks and Raiders, although it's a kind of a different situation because both these teams are on a similar level, Cardinals are going to give them everything they have. I mean, they are basically playing playoff games right now. And the Cardinals, I got them winning this one 27-24. All right, next up, we got the Bears taking on the 49ers. The Bears were, Eberflus, he's gone. Bears fans, you can rest now. Your awful head coach is finally off of your team. And the 49ers, they lost in blowout fashion to the Bills, and they also lost CMC for probably the rest of the season. So it's been a disaster for both of these teams this season. The 49ers were Super Bowl contenders at the start of the year, and they're, just getting injured all over the place, and that kind of fucked their season up, and, it's just over for them. And the Bears, when you have Eberflus as your head coach, that kind of limits what your team can do. So I think both these teams at this point are done. I don't think either team's going to make the playoffs. Although I do think that with whoever the interim head coach is for the Bears will provide a spark that hasn't, been with the Bears, ever since Eberflus was hired, because he just, yikes. And the Bears, I think they'll win this one. And I think Caleb Williams, the Bears have actually, and Caleb Williams and the Bears have looked a lot better than what people would think these past few weeks. Ever since they fired their offensive coordinator, it's just people don't talk about it because they're just talking about how bad Eberflus is. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, the Bears still weren't winning games. I do think that will change, though, here. I think the Bears will win this one 26-21. Next up, we have the Bills taking on the Rams. The Bills, as I just mentioned, blew out the 49ers on Sunday Night Football in the snow. And the Rams, they were able to win against the Saints despite an ugly first half where they didn't score a single point. And, I mean, I think the Bills are going to just win this game pretty handedly because the thing about the Rams is they're not like an awful team, But every time they play against a good team, like a really good team, like the Eagles or the Bills or the Lions or whatever, they don't play good. They always, lose by multiple scores. I mean, granted, they didn't lose by multiple scores to the Lions. That one was actually an outlier, but they still lost, and they can't beat good teams. It's kind of like the Dolphins were last season. Like, they can win against the bad teams like the Giants or the Raiders or whoever it is. But when it comes to actually beating good teams, they kind of just flame out. And I think that's going to be what happens here. I have the Bills winning this one 27-17. All right, our Sunday night football game. We have the Chargers taking on the Chiefs. And the Chargers able to win against the Falcons last week in an ugly game. And the Chiefs were able to win against the Raiders on Friday in an ugly game. And honestly, both these teams are pretty similar. It's just one is a lot more overrated than the other. Because I feel like a lot of these teams have been winning, but they've just been winning ugly games. And I don't think that'll change. I could see either team winning this game because it's a division game. And, I mean, the Chargers have a good defense. The Chiefs have a good defense. Both teams have, offenses that have the ability to be explosive, but they just aren't because, lack of motivation. I don't know. Because, I mean, let's be real. Both these teams are making the playoffs, and the Chiefs have clinched their, playoff spot. And, the Chargers, I mean, they're not a bad team. They're really not, but they're like the Rams. They don't beat, like, the best of the best. The teams that they've lost to, I mean, they lost to the Chiefs earlier. They lost to the Ravens. They lost, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Those two teams are really good. They lost to them. They lost to the Steelers. And, I mean, they lost to the Cardinals. Those are all the games they lost. And, I mean, 3 of those 4 teams are Super Bowl contenders. Unfortunately, the Chiefs qualify as a Super Bowl contender. And I do think the Chiefs will win this game. I think it's going to be boring as hell, and no one's going to want to watch this game because the Chiefs have just been winning games in the most bullshit fashion ever, and I don't see that changing. I think the Chiefs will win this one 13-12. And finally, on Monday Night Football, we have the Bengals taking on the Cowboys. The Bengals losing to the Steelers on Sunday, giving up 40 points to the Steelers of all teams, 44 to be exact. And the Cowboys able to dominate the Giants on Thanksgiving. And, I mean, honestly, both these teams, it's frustrating because both these teams have talent. But because of their incompetence with their head coaches and their owners, it's just they have bad records. Like, both these teams could be in playoff contention right now, but they're not because of their, dumbass owners and their coaches that are just holding this team back. The Bengals have their defense that is awful, like historically awful. And then you have the Cowboys who don't have Dak Prescott anymore, and their defense has been underwhelming as well with the absence of Dan Quinn not being the defensive coordinator anymore. And I think this game will be a shootout. I think the Bengals will put up a lot of points because they have a good offense, and the Cowboys will put up a lot of points because the Bengals defense is arguably the worst in the league. I mean, this team is fucking awful on defense. So I have the Bengals winning this one with a score of 45-40. And that's going to do it for the video. Here's all the score predictions lined up if you want to look at them again real quick. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.